Hey guys, I'm slowly but surely doing a camper conversion on this 96 Ford E350 Club Wagon, and I got most of the inside all stripped out and it looks pretty good. There's a few like minor little surface rust areas in here, but it's not bad except for when I pulled off the front carpet under this driver's feet goes. It was all like bubbling up right here and it was all nasty crumbly rust under there. So it's not too bad. It could be much worse. I've seen some vans where you could like drop your keys down to the pavement if the carpet wasn't here, but it's definitely something I need to fix. And there was a puddle of water in the body mount area, and I'm thinking it's from my cracked windshield because there's a crack that runs all the way down here, and I think it's just slowly pulling up because I saw a little bit of water around where it seals, and it probably just kind of runs down here after a while under heavy rains, and then it just sits under the carpet. I tried to take the body mount off, and of course I snapped it. It's all kind of rusting. The lower bushing is not bad at all, but anyways, let's go ahead and take a look underneath, and there's really not a whole lot of rust under here, just a little bit of surface rust, and right there, and as you can see up in there, it's like it's not all rotted out yet as far as I can tell. And as you can tell, this body mount's starting to crack a little bit, but my plan is to try and replace the 4 front body mounts because they have a little bit of cracking going on. However, the rear ones don't seem to be too bad. So I'm gonna start grinding and cutting this away a little bit, but before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and put up a bunch of plastic because I kind of want to close off the rest of the van so I'm not getting all kinds of rust and metal dust, you know, down in all those little crevices. All right, got it masked off for the most part. I got some old towels down here to kind of catch the sparks. Be sure to wear a respirator, and I recommend some like actual safety goggles because glasses are better than nothing, but I always have like junk going in the sides of them and still getting in my eyes. And I just have a grinding disc and some cutoff wheels. Be sure not to use the cutoff wheels as a grinding disc or they can explode. But basically I'm just gonna start grinding away just to see, you know, how bad it really is. So down below is that big plate that kind of like supports everything, and that's this right here that's starting to rust. And then on top of that is just the sheet metal. And no matter what you do, you want to be really careful because you don't want to cut too deep because the frame rail is maybe like that far from right here, and there's actually like brake lines sitting on the frame rail, probably like around here or something like that. You just want to be sure you just cut just enough to get through the sheet metal. Also, you might want some gloves and possibly hearing protection as well. Alright, I ground it back a little bit, and there's definitely a rusty under here. But what I'm gonna do now is take a drill, small drill bit, crawl under here, and I'm pretty much gonna wanna cut out the upper sheet metal around this plate right here, because I think that's the part that we're seeing. Drill hole right through here. Drill hole right at this corner. Hole. And here's the other. This one wasn't right on the corner, but this one should be. So we just kind of need to find that and cut along there and along here. Mostly have it cut out for the most part. I couldn't really fit this in here very well, so I might use like a Dremel tool and then clean everything up around here and try to get as much rust as possible off. So I did save this top part that the body mount bolt goes through. However, it is pretty rusty. So might have to figure out a way to recreate this. I also put a little piece of sheet metal under there where the brake lines are, just to kind of protect them and that wire harness that is down there. So since now I have a rough cutout, I'm going to use some squares and rulers and a Sharpie and just make it a lot more straight. right, that's looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to use the Dremel tool and clean up all the edges. I also try to clean up all the rust that I possibly can. So there is a good amount of rust down in the body mount hole. So basically it has a thick piece of steel that kind of wraps around where the body mount bolt goes through, and it keeps it like from collapsing when it's really tight. And I have kind of considered trying to remove this plate to clean everything up underneath there. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to spray a bunch of fluid film down in there when I put the body mount in, and that'll keep it from rusting any further. I'm going to use a big drill bit to kind of clean up that rust in there a little bit. So yeah, if I had a sandblaster, that would be perfect to just kind of clean out that hole and put some rust encapsulator in there. All right, let's try the Dremel tool. All right, that's looking pretty good, nice and shiny. Got rid of pretty much all of the rust possibly could. And now we're just ready to build a new piece to weld in here. So I'm not gonna try to reuse this divot where the body mount clamps down on. As you can see, it's all rotting away. And if I try to clean that up, it would be paper thin or just go right through it. So what I did is went to the junkyard, and since most all of them in the same location were probably more rusty than my van, I cut one off the back, and I think that'll work. So there's a little bit of flash rust I need to take care of because it's been sitting out here for about a week. But here's the new dish, and unfortunately it doesn't go all the way down. There's like maybe a centimeter or so. This one pretty much went all the way to the bottom. All right, just got back from work and that looks a lot better. I just used the hydraulic press and some sockets and a little cup, and check this out. It's pretty darn good. I just got these 6-inch by 18-inch 16 gauge sheet metal pieces at Home Depot, and I already removed the mill scale on one of them. So you want it to be as clean as possible when you MIG weld. So I'm probably gonna make this as like a 2-piece, especially because it slopes up right here. But I'll just take a 16 gauge sheet metal, and I can't really fit it in here super well because it's too big. But I'm gonna just kind of line it up, mark it, but I'm gonna go a little bit past because I'd rather have to grind some off than have it too small. I'll grab a square, line it up with that mark. Just follow that line with a cutoff wheel. And here it is. It's obviously a little bit bigger than it needs to be, but that's good. And I guess we could start with this side. And if you look at the gap, mark the parts that are touching so we can move the gaps closer together right here. If we need to take off a lot, we can use the grinding wheel. Be sure not to use a cutting wheel as a grinding wheel or they can explode. But if you just want to take off a little bit, I'll use an abrasive pad on my little mini angle grinder. It actually takes it off pretty quick. Pretty much you just want to go back and forth and take a little off and then fit it up again, make some marks, and check that out. It's like pretty much perfect. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, a little bit of gaps here and there is not too bad. And if there is a fairly big gap, there is a way to fill that. Like right here where I cut a little too far. But that side is good enough for me. So now we got to start working on this side. Be careful that we don't take too much off. I guess we can just kind of mark but we have to take off. Clamp our workpiece close to the table. It won't skip like it was earlier. And I really like this thing a lot better than trying to use a grinding wheel. Take our time. So I went back and forth about 10 times, just kind of marking and taking a little bit off. Just want to do a little at a time, and that is a pretty good fitment right there. You can see there's a little bit of a gap because this plate kind of bends upwards. So I'll make a couple little marks, kind of like where we need to put a little bit of a bend in it. Let's do like 3, maybe like around there, maybe 4. Then we kind of want to bend it this way just slightly. So just put one mark right there. And I'll just use the square to make a line. Each one of those marks. I got a piece of square tubing clamped on so where that line is. I just have a hand seamer. I don't know if this is gonna work or not, but let's give it a try. Yeah, it looks like we went a little bit too far right there. And we'll bend the other side. It's formed pretty well to this plate. However, I'm going to use a pry bar and some channel locks to kind of just bend everything into shape so it matches perfectly. As you can see, this is almost flush right here, so this needs to just kind of get bent up slightly. Nice and flush. And we can always kind of move it around as we tack weld it if I need to. I have the body mount divot positioned exactly where I want it, and I got a little bit of double-sided sticky foam tape on the corners. And now, very carefully, I'm going to line up the sheet metal piece that I made and stick it on. I'll use the Sharpie to make an outline. And then cut it out. All right, let's see if it fits. And not quite. I think if I just smooth out these corners on this piece, it'll fit a lot easier. Perfect, guys. Drops right in. Just need to kind of bend these edges out a little bit so it matches up perfectly. That is so satisfying. It's perfect. Next, we just have to make the top part, and this is going to be a little bit challenging right there, but I think we can do it. I need a little bit more right here, so I'll go a little bit past. So just do it right here and right there. And we'll draw the lines with the square, and let's go ahead and make the rough cut. Now I'm just gonna start marking and taking material off. I want to cut around this so it's able to slide in there, and pretty good right there. Now we just kind of need to bend it. So we'll find the deepest part, which is right there. Draw a line. All right, it's looking pretty good besides this part. So bend it up, maybe like right around there. And we'll see if that works. I'll just throw this in the vise here. Bent that little bit up with some channel locks. And it's looking pretty good. Now we just have to shape this part. And we'll just take some off there. Hopefully we don't take too much. Look at that. We're getting pretty close. You may have to change the bend just a little bit. And check that out. It's definitely not perfect, but I'm not gonna have any problem welding this up. And last, we just need to fit up the bottom part, and then I'll draw a line. This is so satisfying to have it fit so nicely like this. Took me all day, but it's definitely worth it. So the plan is to butt weld everything together, but I also want to do plug welds that weld the actual body to this plate, because that's how it was. There was spot welds, and I went all the way up here. So I'll just use a Sharpie, probably just use this line right here. And I made a little line right here where that plate underneath ends. And then one there. Oh, you can see that. It's right there. One right here. And one right here. I'll just match the drill bit to one of these spot welds that are already here. And then drill out all the holes. So I got it all masked off again, and I'm just gonna get rid of all this rust the best I can. I just got one of these abrasive pads on my electric angle grinder. Also guys, real quick, I'm just gonna take some sandpaper and try to get the inner edges as much as possible around here. So I'm gonna try to clean this part so we can access in the wheel well. Alright guys, that's probably as good as it's gonna get. So next, gonna fire up the vacuum. And of course, let's use some compressed air. We just want to make sure we get everything out of all these cavities as much as possible. Alright, we got it as clean as we could with the vacuum and compressed air. And now we'll just use some lacquer thinner to give it a nice prep. You just want to clean it best you can until get rid of all the dirt. I got this Spray Max self-etching weld through primer, and just on the undersides of these pieces, because we can't get to them after we weld them. And you want the weld through or else the welding process will destroy the coating. It's kind of hard to find like locally. I had to buy it online. And just make sure you follow the instructions. I've been shaking this can for about 2 minutes. And when you're it says when you're welding, you only have to do 1 coat. Make sure to get all the edges. It says it should be dry in 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm assuming we can weld at that point. And it's always a good idea if you want to reuse your paint to turn it upside down, give it a spray.
Have it masked off just because I don't want to get the weld through primer up here because I'm putting a different coating on it. But pretty much the same as the other pieces we did. Use some tack cloth right before. And then I'm going to use an acid brush for the weld cup. Try to get all these inner edges.
Guys, before you weld, it's very important to disconnect your batteries. Usually you just have to disconnect the negative side, but in this case, I'm just going to disconnect both. However, you always want to disconnect the negative first before you disconnect the positive. The auxiliary battery is isolated on this vehicle, but I'll just go ahead and remove it as well. Let's go ahead and fit up all the plates. Hopefully nothing's changed. Nice, perfect fit. And last but not least, body mount divot. All right, we got the fiberglass blankets making a nice fireproof cave here in the van. And I actually have steel plates, and under that I have a fiberglass blanket covering all those lines that are on top of the frame rail and the fuel lines and all that stuff. So it's all under there. It's for my welder. I got a high temp hot glue gun, and now let's go ahead and weld this thing up. Nah, I'm just kidding. I got an Eastwood MIG 90. So I made a complete video on the Eastwood MIG 90 on how to set it up and use it, but we'll go ahead and set it up. And we're running 0203 to 17 gauge, maybe a little higher. And we can adjust it as we need it. So I made a spot over here for the ground where the seat goes. And I just got it down to bare metal and cleaned the bolt up and then just kind of bolted the ground on there, because you want to have a nice ground when welding on a vehicle. I also got a fire extinguisher handy just in case. Go ahead and put some anti-spatter on the workpiece and go all around it too. So I'm going to start out by just tack welding the thing all around, and I'm not going to do the plug welds until after it's all tack welded. So I probably should have done some down here, but we can just push this back down. Let's do all the 4 corners. Alright guys, it's all tacked up nice and good. It's pretty toasty still, so I'm gonna let it cool down fully. And I did burn a hole right through there, and unfortunately it's a part where I can't get to underneath. What I should have done is turn the machine down for around the sides, because I burned a little bit through right there, and then just turned it up for the plug welds. But oh well, we'll make it work. But now we're pretty much gonna do what's called stitch welding. So basically we run just a little bit and then we change over to the other side, run a little bit and then kind of go back and forth or furthest away from the heat that you just made. And we'll probably do like some cool down breaks in between. And I do have a wire wheel so we can kind of clean it up and throw some more of that anti-spatter on there. As you can see, we did get some good penetration into those plug welds on that bottom plate. But anyways, let's get it done.
Oh, it's not going well.
I see the light. Don't need you anymore. We have a pretty big gap here. That's kind of where I cut a little too far. But I got this special tool that has magnets on it and an adjustable little copper thing because welding won't stick to copper. So it kind of acts as a heat sink. See right there, we should be able to fill that all in right there. And it should just come right off. I wasn't quite able to bend that back down with just the bolt. I'm just using my air hammer with a 1/2 inch adapter and a socket. That's good enough for me. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It's really solid, much better than that rust we had. However, it's kind of pointless to fix this if you don't prevent it from rusting again. So we're gonna do some coatings on it. I'm gonna go ahead and take my electric angle grinder with a purple rust disc. This stuff takes off rust and paint really easily, but it doesn't bite into metal. And I'm just gonna find little spots like that. It's hard to see, but they're like kind of bubbling up. I think there's a little bit of surface rust under there. Yeah, see, it's kind of hiding under there. I'm just gonna kind of blast off any spots like that or scratches and stuff. I might hit some of these scratches over here. Definitely take my time. Get it all clean. Stuff goes pretty quick. So that's looking pretty decent without, taking all of the paint off, because I just don't see a purpose of doing that. If you're wondering, a lot of it seems like in really good shape, like up and around there. I just kind of got some spots that look like they may have some rust, and if in doubt, might as well just scrape it off and see if there's rust under there. But now I'm just gonna clean up the opposite side that I welded, at least as much as I can. While we're here, might as well clean up some of this like pitted surface rust. Actually, you know what? I don't even know if this is rust, because it kind of looks like it, but it might actually just be dirt. Because look at that, there's no rust under there. We're getting to primer. Let's spray a little engine cleaner on there. Let's see if we can just take this off. So yeah, that's really cool. Totally thought that was rust. But yeah, no rust under there. Just switch to a really small wire wheel, just so I could probably get in there. So I could only get so far with that, but I'm gonna use a Dremel tool with a little extension shaft and some brushes. Clean it up as best as I can. A little bit of compressed air. Next, I'm just going to use a Scotch-Brite pad just to kind of rough up all of the paint in between, just so the paint will stick really well to it. And I'll do that on the bottom as well. I'm gonna take these lint-free rags. I got these at Walmart for like 10 bucks. And it comes with 300 of them. Absolutely love those things. And then some lacquer thinner. And we're gonna clean up the surfaces that we're gonna paint. And see all that stuff that's coming off? We wanna get to the point where it's completely clean. But definitely take your time on the preparation steps. I'm not gonna show, every little bit that I'm doing because this video would be way too long. It'll either make or break your paint job, depending on how much time and effort you put into the preparation. All right, it's nice and clean. For the coating, I'm going to be using Eastwood's Rust Encapsulator Platinum. I absolutely love this stuff. It is such a versatile paint. So you can apply it directly over rust as long as you clean the rust up as much as you can. But you can also apply it directly over bare metal. And it works great as a primer, and you can pretty much like top coat it with just about anything. It's moisture cured, which is pretty cool, and it's like aluminum reinforced. The stuff is really, really strong, and it's heat resistant up to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is nice because I'm going to be putting a little bit on the edge next to the exhaust manifold. And this also holds up to 1,500 hours of saltwater spray, so it will be perfect for this sort of thing. So I kind of messed up the lid a little bit getting it open, but that's okay because I like to put it in jars, because when you try to reclose the lid, it gets kind of glued shut unless it's perfectly clean. But I'm just going to mix it up with a paint mixer. Instructions say to use a bristle brush, which makes sense, so you can get into like the little crevices and little cracks and stuff like that, especially if you're painting directly over rust. But anyways, let's go ahead and get painting. I also have a tack cloth, so I can just kind of clean up any dust or debris as I go. So if you live in a really dry environment, you might want to wipe it down with a wet rag, just because this is a moisture cured paint. This would probably just help it cure a little bit better. Just make sure you wait at least 48 hours before you do this. I reconnected the batteries, and let's go ahead and try to start it up and make sure I didn't fry the PCM with my welder. I hear the fuel pump. Good to go. So since it looked like the rust was coming in between those two plates, because the paint, was still good on top, it was just like cracking through. I'm not exactly sure where all that water is coming from. It could be coming from the tire, splashing it up in here, and then just it sits down inside there. And I'm not sure why there was water in the body mount hole, unless it was just filled up inside here and then it kind of just seeped in, or it's coming from the windshield. But I haven't seen any water leak yet, and we've had a few rains and I keep checking, but I don't see anything. But what I'm gonna do to make sure it doesn't rust again is I got this Eastwood internal frame coating, and this is just the green one, so it's a bit cheaper. Stops the rust from the inside out. It's meant to be sprayed like inside of cavities where you can't normally get to. And inside it comes with the 360 spray tube and then the coating itself. And be sure to read all the instructions. Converts, encapsulates, and seals rust on the internal frame surfaces. Phenolic resin with a zinc additive. Eliminates further corrosion. You really can't prep the inside of this very well, but the best we can do is just spray it out with some compressed air. So remember those channels on each side of the body mount divot? We're gonna try to spray all the way as far as we can in those. should be able to get a lot of paint on both sides. And this one might be quite a bit harder. Maybe hard to show. Oh, it's right there. We should be able to get it. See all that exposed metal where we weld it? We want to get as much of that as possible. Put the tube all the way up there, spray this whole thing out. And we'll definitely spray inside of this section. And then we'll probably just go back a ways as well. Okay, I've been shaking it for over a minute, and now we can go ahead and spray it in. And do the other one as well.
And we'll also go ahead and spray some down in the body mount cavity. Now we can take some gun cleaner, and it looks like this has the same fitting, and we can just stick this on here, clean that out.
Well guys, I finally got around to doing some seam sealer, and I just used a Scotch-Brite pad and scuffed up anything that I wanted to apply it to. And I used a little bit of Eastwood's pre-green with some lint-free disposable towels and just made sure it was super clean. And I'm just using some 3M seam sealer in white. And then up here, I just followed where that factory seam seal was, up into the weld area. But I had some left over, so I just kind of seam sealed a little bit on the side, even though it didn't really have any there from the factory. I just thought might as well, and a little bit up in the corner just in case. And then I went underneath and seam sealed the underside of the welds, at least all the ones I could get to. Not exactly sure if it's 100% necessary, but I kind of just want it to protect the welds, you know, from rusting in the future. Just a little extra protection there. But anyways, guys, it's actually been about 8 months since I fixed the floor under the driver's side here. And I think I drove the van like 50 miles with it like that. I actually didn't have the body mount bolt in there at that time, but everything was fine when I drove it. But during that 8 months, the van's pretty much just been sitting outside. We've had a lot of rains and snows and everything, and I've been checking for leaks. I haven't seen anything, and no more rust has been cropping up, and it looks perfectly good, just how it did after I finished it. And just tonight, I took my borescope and looked into all of those cavities down below where we sprayed that Eastwood's internal frame coating, and it looks pretty good. There was a few little spots where I could see just a tiny little bit of rust. I know one of them looks like I didn't actually get the coating on it, and it's just a little bit of surface rust, so I might have to recoat that. And I also looked up into that plate, and I don't see any signs of rust. I know later down the road, when I refinish the whole underside of the van, I'm gonna be spraying everything out with wool wax, and that'll really prevent it from rusting. But I kind of just wanna like coat everything properly with paint, and then later down the road do wool wax on top of that. So whenever that coating like gets little cracks or starts to peel or something, that wool wax is just gonna seep in there and just prevent anything from rusting. That stuff is really cool for stopping rust. But anyways, guys, I am super happy with how it turned out. Obviously, you're not gonna see all the welds underneath the carpet, so I just didn't bother grinding them off or anything. I didn't want to have to deal with, you know, getting it really thin or going through welds and making little pinholes and stuff like that. And that's part of the reason why I put the seam sealer underneath, just to kind of seal it all up. But I'm actually surprised I was able to pull that off like I did, because guys, I really don't have much experience welding or bodywork or anything. I'm kind of like new to this, like a lot of people out there. It's pretty incredible what you can actually accomplish if you actually try. And of course, you'll learn a whole lot along the way. And at the time of making this last part, I have already done a ton of other welding projects on this van. I kind of just like had a daydream of like getting rid of the big windows on the side. So I just cut the panels out where those big windows go out of the regular panel vans in the junkyard. And I just ended up welding them on the side, and it actually worked out really well. I've already Raptor lined most of the van. I still have one side, it got too cold. But I've just been working on some other projects here in the winter time. I also fixed a little rusted through spot on the quarter panel that turned out pretty well. Definitely not like perfect, but good enough for me, and it should definitely stop it from rusting. And I've also welded a custom bed frame in the back of this thing. It's actually turning out really cool. But anyways, guys, I'm gonna have a lot more videos on the van coming, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button if that's something you're interested in, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.